Lockdown 2.0. This new wave of crashes will keep the United States of America in economic depression throughout the 2020 elections. Another crash wave has begun, and this is really bad news for the United States economy. The first crash was caused by the constant closure of more than 100,000 US companies, the enormous lines of food banks across the country, and the loss of tens of millions of jobs. Needless to say, this new wave of crashes will make things worse. And some think Democrats want exactly this. If the United States economy continues to crumble as it approaches the election in November, its thinking will make President Trump bad and increase the likelihood of people voting for Democrats. But there is also the possibility of a great kickback to the left. If millions of Americans begin to define Democrats as a lockdown party, this could actually help President Trump in November. At this point, the lines of war become very clear. President Trump and other top Republicans strongly oppose more lockdowns, but Democratic politicians in many parts of the country are still starting to set them up. In fact, we learned that all schools in Los Angeles, San Diego, Atlanta, and Nashville will be closed at the beginning of the new school year. Resisting pressure from President Donald Trump, 3 of the nation's largest school districts said Monday that they will begin the new school year with all students learning from home. Schools in Los Angeles, San Diego, and Atlanta will begin entirely online, officials said Monday. Schools in Nashville plan to do the same, at least through Labor Day. Other major cities are also expected to comply. Of course, given the quality of education in most of our public schools, most of these children will not be too complete. Ultimately, closing schools will not have much economic impact, but most businesses in our largest state will certainly be closed. On Monday, California Governor Gavin Newsom announced a comprehensive lockdowns for 30 California states, making up about 80% of California's population. Newsom, a Democrat, announced during a press briefing that all bars across the state must close up shop and that restaurants, wineries, tasting rooms, family entertainment centers, zoos, museums, and card rooms must suspend indoor activities. The governor also announced that all gyms, places of worship, malls, personal care services, barbershops, salons, and non-critical offices in counties on the state's monitoring list had to shut down under the new order. The order affects more than 30 counties, which are home to about 80% of California's population. Newsom is a political opportunist, and I guarantee that he will not do this unless he really believes he will help the Democrats in November. But I think Newsom and other top Democrats greatly underestimate how much the American people have reduced their COVID-19 restrictions at this point. We witness a huge gap all over the country, and although California is much more liberal than most other states, there was a reaction there as well. If the Democrats are not very careful, they will lose a selection they can easily win. First of all, they never nominated Joe Biden. It is clear that everyone is falling very quickly, physically and mentally, and his chilling behavior videos will be viewed millions of times in the coming months. Democrats have known Biden's creepy behavior for years, but still decided to nominate it. Secondly, most of the top Democrats refused to strongly condemn the rebellion, looting, and violence across the country, and this will push many people towards the Republicans. Third, the reactions of these new lockdowns will be directed primarily to the Democrats. If Democrat politicians go too far, this will be a problem that hurts them deeply in November. However, despite all these mistakes, it is still possible for Democrats to peak because Trump and Republicans are also making many political mistakes. If Trump wants to make a comeback in the polls, he really needs to fully embrace an anti-crash message, because this will be strongly echoed with tens of millions of voters. The first crash wave certainly did not stop the virus from spreading, and further crashes did not prevent its spread. And now, 3 separate scientific studies have shown that COVID-19 antibodies disappear very, very quickly, which means that a vaccine will not end this crisis, and we will never reach the point of herd immunity. So we will have to find a way to function effectively, as this virus has been circulating around the world every year, because it will not go away. We cannot stop the economy every time the number of cases increases. Our damage to the US economy could not be calculated, and now these new crashes will cause even more damage. However, who insist that more restrictions are required? Let me be blunt, too many countries are headed in the wrong direction. The virus remains public enemy number 1, who Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told a virtual briefing from the UN agency's headquarters in Geneva. If basics are not followed, the only way this pandemic is going to go, it is going to get worse and worse and worse. What would WHO do to us? Do they want us to lock us all to our homes indefinitely? WHO continues to identify a future vaccine, but if COVID-19 antibodies disappear after just a few months, there is no way a vaccine can end this epidemic. And many Americans never get the COVID-19 vaccine under any circumstances. It seems that we have to accept the fact that COVID-19 will be year after year. As I have discussed in an article I have already published, it is easy for experts to say that everyone should only stay at home, but the price tag of the first crash wave was astronomical. Thanks to all emergency measures the Congress underwent, the US government gave a budget deficit of $864 billion in June. The US budget deficit surged to a record-breaking $864 billion in June, the Treasury Department said on Monday. The increase is the product of the federal government's efforts to combat the coronavirus pandemic and its economic fallout. The government collected about $240 billion in tax revenue in June, the Treasury said, and federal spending overall reached $1.1 trillion. To put it in perspective, the US government had to accumulate a total of $864 billion from the foundation of our nation until 1980. And now, in just a month, we added this much to national debt. We cannot continue doing this. Whatever we do, COVID-19 will continue to spread, and we will have to learn how to deal with this virus for a very long time. Further lockdowns are certainly not the answer, but unfortunately, many of our politicians are otherwise convinced. Therefore, the economic conditions of the USA will continue to deteriorate, and the economic crisis that started earlier this year will continue until the end of 2020. Dear Daily News Report viewers, you can find other videos by clicking on the top right button. We recommend watching, subscribing, and sharing. Thanks in advance. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision,
it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.